Hello, I'm Bob Herrera, Superintendent of Farmington Public Schools, and I'd like to welcome you to this week's Friday Spotlight. We have a panel with me today, or an opportunity to have a panel with me today that is leading the Learning Management System initiative at the secondary. I'd like to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves as panelists. Margaret, would you please go first?
Yeah, Margaret Hendrickson. I'm the Director for Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment here in Farmington.
Pat?
Hello, I'm Pat Torres. I am a Spanish teacher in the district. I started in 95 at Harrison High School, was there for 24 years, I think it is. And I'm now at North Farmington High School. And over the years, I've taught anywhere from Spanish 1 through AP.
And Peggy?
Hi, I'm Peggy Nigerian, and I started in the district in 93 as a student teacher, and I never left. I teach this year AP Biology, Anatomy and Physiology. Next semester will be Genetics and Biotechnology and Honors Chemistry. I love being in Farmington.
Great. And thank you for being with us today. Both of you, appreciate it. Margaret, as you know, we just expect you to be with us at this point in time. So the Spotlight is honestly one of my favorite activities in the district, because in this particular event, I get to ask the questions and not answer them, which is a welcomed opportunity for me. So I'd like to begin. The first question is for Margaret. Margaret, Canvas is obviously new this year. What have you noticed about the rollout in secondary versus the elementary? And what opportunities or challenges have we seen so far?
When we launched the use of Canvas, all the teachers were kind of in the same place, having some base expectations of a home page, announcements, and calendar. And so at the very beginning, the rollout in elementary and secondary were very much the same types of questions. But what we've noticed as we got farther and farther into the rollout is the types of questions elementary ask and secondary ask are very different. Part of that's content, part of that is age group of the students and the types of tasks of what teachers want to do with the system. So very quickly, things kind of blew up in terms of who wants to know what about the system. And in elementary, a lot of it was about the design of the homepage. So how can kids interact and know where to go and what to find, and then use of the different tools in the system and some of the stuff we've added to the system like Padlet or Flipgrid. But then when you go to secondary, there's this huge component on Canvas around assignments and grading and gradebook and feedback, which a lot of our secondary people launched into much sooner than we had anticipated. We saw Canvas really first being how to deliver instruction and tasks to kids. And what soon happened was secondary started to accelerate. Many teachers started to accelerate past. And so a lot of the supports that secondary has needed has been a little bit different. And one of the challenges that we face with that is it accelerated so quickly that students are then put on a different learning curve. And the way Pat might set up her homepage is different than Peggy. Mm-hmm. The student has 6 classrooms. And so in setting up the home pages, people set it up to fit their style and their content, but the way we all set it up is different. And that's posed a challenge for our students trying to navigate all of those. And so we're really going to be asking teachers to kind of revisit their pages and the organization with their students to kind of make sure everyone understands how theirs is set up, particularly where do you find assignments, to-dos, and what do I have to do, what do I not have to do, how do I submit assignment? And there's so many variety. We're finding staff with having a variety of types of assignments they're giving kids. Not all of them get submitted the same way or use the same tool for submission, because we've added features like Ed Video and Padlet and things that we've talked about. And then that's another learning curve for the kids. So as our teachers have really tried to create interactivity and dynamics, it's created a bigger learning curve for everyone in the system. And it's been hard for us to anticipate what students need to know and parents needed to know. So I think we've been a little bit behind in really knowing what to help students with and teachers and parents, because Canvas is kind of different in every classroom. So we felt behind, but that's a challenge we're starting to work on and thinking about better supports for students and parents. And I know Peggy's National Honor Society kids are going to help us with that, with creation of videos. So that probably was a little long-winded, but that's kind of where we've been so far with rollout. And I'm sure Pat and Peggy can tell you a lot more.
Well, thank you. So I do have questions for Pat and Peggy, of course. Peggy, first question is for you. As any teacher knows, especially as we students get older, student engagement is extremely important in in getting students to learn the content, or our ability to facilitate their learning in the content. So what are some ways that you're able to get the students engaged in your content in this virtual environment?
So one of the things that I always tried to do when I was in person was like monitoring kids. I could see their faces. I could tell. I could just quickly ask them a question, and it wasn't quite as easy when we went virtual. So there are a lot of tools in Canvas, and or just tools in general that I've been using and other teachers have been using. There's a polling feature on Big Blue Button that I love, whether it's an ABC, like just a quick little ABC, and I tell the kids what it is, or I make a little custom poll, but it takes seconds to make the poll, and the kids know it's coming, and I can tell who's answered and who's not answered. We've had there's a feature in, again, Big Blue Button called Shared Notes, and I found that it was taking a really long time for us to go through homework questions. Like if I gave them a set of questions I wanted them to do on asynchronous time, I would put all of the questions in the Shared Notes, and then I'd ask kids for I'd ask for volunteers, and then some volunteered, some didn't. So if I was lacking in volunteers in advance, I'd say, okay, Joe, you're going to do 1, and Sue, you're going to do 2. And I asked them, maybe I give them a time frame. So would you put your answers in the Shared Notes, and then we could discuss them. Other things I've had kids do, we've used Studio. We have a nice little feature in Studio that actually, I've used it for a couple of ways. I've used it for kids to explain an answer to me, mostly because I wanted them to be able to orally tell me if they understood, and it's a really good way of judging. I also have used Studio actually for a social emotional learning. When I taught them how to use Studio, I said, just tell me how you are. Tell me how you're doing. Tell me, is there anything that isn't working for you that you want me to change? Or is there something that I'm doing that you really love and you want me to continue? So I've tried to use like a lot of different features. This really feels like a time that we can experiment.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the fact that we can, I keep asking, I constantly ask my students for feedback. Okay, we just did this assignment using this tool. Did you like it? Was it confusing? How do you think it went? And do you want me to make more assignments using this tool? So there's just so much, there's a lot of options out there. And as long as I'm trying to give students a variety, and I'm constantly asking them for feedback. And I think
you use 2 words, and maybe want to explain to everyone who out there who might not know. Big Blue Button is, and Studio is. What are those?
I'm sorry. Yes,
that's okay.
Yeah, so Big Blue Button is the Canvas version of Meet, or Canvas version of their online platform. So right now we're using WebEx. When we started, we were using Google Meet, which I like Google Meet. I like the kids like and don't like that you can see each other using Meet. But the Big Blue Button is, I like it because there's one spot to go. The kids always know where to go. There's no new link. We don't have to worry about other people hopping in, and it has in it a lot of features. There's like a little emoji feature, so I can say, okay, is everybody ready? And then I'm like, I want a thumbs up. Okay, so then I get a whole line of thumbs ups or a thumbs down if they're not ready. So it's a real quick way of communicating. So yeah, Big Blue Button is just the version of the online conferencing tool. And then Studio is a way of to have students record themselves. So whereas maybe you would take a video using your phone, or there's another tool called Flipgrid that kids could go to and answer, give an oral answer. This is just something that's built into Canvas, and it's fast, and they don't have to leave. They just click, talk, stop, and hit submit, and that's it. So I've been using it a lot more in the last 2 weeks or so.
Right.
Oh, and may I say one more thing? You mentioned the student videos. I'm the National Honor Society. One of the 2 advisors, Don Morris, is the other one, and the kids have so far there's one video I think that's been posted, and I have a few more that some of my NHS kids have been submitting. So on the, I think it's the Canvas student FRQ, there will be more videos of our kids just saying, hey, this is how you submit this assignment. Hey, this is how you do this other cool thing. So
Cool. Great. Thanks.
Nice.
Yes.
Well, Peggy, as you started this conversation, you mentioned how that you were, giving kids an opportunity to volunteer for answers. Unfortunately, as me being the facilitator of this panel, I'm not going to be quite so kind. I'm just going to have direct questions for each of you. So I'm going to move on to the next one, and Pat, the next one's for you. So when engaging students in this virtual space, that's great that you've got all these strategies, you're engaging them, but the purpose of engagement is to determine their depth of knowledge or monitor their learning in all this. So how are you interacting with the students to give them feedback on their learning in this remote environment?
Yes, feedback is definitely necessary, especially, in all classes. I think with language classes, not being able to see my kids every single day and hear them speaking Spanish, I'm really definitely needing a lot of feedback to give them. But I have to say, I'm taking notes while Peggy was talking, and I'm like, I gotta meet with her more on Big Blue Button. I've kind of dabbled with a little bit, but I'm still using Google Meets. But that studio feature, I need to talk to you with. So, and the reason why I said that is because one of the features that I do use for video or for feedback is I do the video, like where I tape myself and give them feedback that way. And I also decorate their papers, is what one of my colleagues called it. When they turn in their papers, we have all those annotation tools. And so I can like mark up their paper and put little sticky, like little drops on there, like, hey, like you missed an accent mark here, spelling error, etc. So I do all of my little annotations in there. And that's how I'm giving them feedback with that through comments. A lot of them will have a little mini conversation back and forth in the submission comments. And then video comments that I give to them. Sometimes it's just too hard to type it all up. So I click record and I record myself saying, this is what you did wrong, or this is what, this was great. Could you also add on, you missed this piece, etc. So that's how I'm giving a lot of feedback. And then the only tricky part to that is that getting the kids to look at the feedback then is the part that I have to lead them through that. So usually when I start my class, I'll say, okay, go back into the assignment. I'll click on it. I'm hopeful Canvas is going to find a way. I think they're working on it to make them viewing their feedback. They have to kind of go through a couple of steps to get to it. Okay. So I created a video to show them how to get to their feedback, and they go in and they click on it, but then they can see their papers. Well, their type of documents or their papers, because they can upload a picture of their paper. But they have to go out, find it in Canvas, and then they can see my feedback and watch the video that I sent them, or look at the feedback. And the other good thing there is that then they can resubmit it immediately. All they have to do is click on that, fix the errors, and then resubmit the assignment, and it comes right back to me.
Right.
I know there's a spot in notifications that kids can set up their account when you make comments I believe that they can be sent to them.
Yes, I think I've encouraged that.
There will be a video on that too, actually.
Oh, good.
A student making the video.
Awesome.
Great. Well, thank you. So again, back to the engagement. So as I reflect back to a few years ago when I used to be a building administrator and do classrooms observations, like we mentioned earlier, one of the key things we look for is levels of engagement in the classroom. And one perspective on that was communications, level of communication. So often we would go in the classroom, we would see a lot of teacher to class communications. Sometimes we would see student to teacher communications. Sometimes we'd see teacher to group communications. But one of the levels of communications that we knew students would be highly engaged in was when you see student to student interaction and engagement. So Peggy, what are some of the ways strategies that you use to get your students to interact with each other in this remote environment, so you're getting a high level of engagement?
So one of the things that one of the tools in Big Blue Button that I use is Breakout Rooms, and I can very quickly send kids off into a little virtual classroom, and they can, and that's actually the spot where they can see each other if they have their cameras on, and then they can interact with each other. So, for example, I gave my AP Bio kids a sample AP question and asked them to just practice answering it. And then yesterday they came with the question, and then I said, okay, I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, and I gave them a poor answer of a student that I had made up, and the scoring guidelines. And then I said, okay, you're going to go into this breakout room in your group, and I think it was about 3 or 4 kids per room. I said, I want you to first score this student's answer, and then I want you to score your answer. And then together, I would like you all to come up with the perfect answer. And so it's very nice. I can pop in and listen or get involved in their conversations. And, every group was talking, every group was commenting how poor the one student's answer was, which was my intention. And just, I wanted them to recognize, the difference between a high quality answer where you're elaborating and explaining and providing examples versus one that, doesn't. So it's nice. I like popping in and listening to them talk to each other.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I would have been one of your students that when you put us in groups, I would have, hoped to get matched with a couple of kids that really wanted to talk a lot, so I could offer only a little. So it's interesting, even from where I'm at in workshops and as we're placed in these chat rooms, they'll put us in a chat room and they'll say, okay, you got 15 minutes in this chat room. And I'm always hoping, okay, I hope there's like 7 people in my chat room. Then I only have to talk for 2 minutes. And then I'll find myself in a chat room, there's only 3, and then I've got to talk for 5 minutes. So, but it's interesting, for me, remote, it's one thing to sit there and be an active listener and still look like you're engaged in the chat. But in a remote, if you're not actually leading portion of the conversation, it just appears that you're not involved. So it's kind of, I think it's pushed me more to actually, talk and be more engaged in the chats than just an active listener like I could get away with when we were person to person. So I agree, this remote has changed things up a lot. So it sounds like you found some good strategies to get your kids to be able to engage in this and provide feedback so they can all learn and grow.
Thank you.
That would have made me very nervous being in the class, by the way. That forced me right out of my comfort zone. So good for you.
Try to make it so it's low risk.
Yes, and that is the key to this as well. That's been the nice thing about the chat rooms, is if you are going to actually contribute something, it's much safer in the chat room than it is with the full class as well. So all good things. Thank you for sharing. Pat, so this is more of a technical question for you. You are part of the pilot team for the Gradebook Passback. What is the Gradebook Passback anyway, and how is it going to help us?
It is the best thing ever for Canvas, and for it honestly, and Margaret can attest to this. I think there was one of my other colleagues was like, yes, it worked. So Grade Passback is, so when we got Canvas, there were some of us that, I was one of them that just kind of put everything in Canvas. I set up my gradebook in Canvas. Like I was talking about earlier with the feedback, I loved it. There's something called Speed Grader in Canvas where I was like, wow, this is awesome. I can, flip through these papers. I can give them their feedback. I can, all of that. And then all of their grades automatically are right in Canvas. So for me, I was like, well, this is great, especially coming from Google Classroom where I had to put all of their grades on a piece of paper, put them into MyStar. It was very laborious to do all that. So I was super excited about the grades going in Canvas automatically, immediately. Any of those resubmissions that I was talking about earlier immediately goes right in for the gradebook, right? So it was a beautiful thing. Then we realized that maybe it wasn't so beautiful because they weren't going to be able to go transfer over to MyStar. So then apparently, thanks to you and thanks to Margaret, we got that Grade Passback Canvas started that. And Margaret, sorry, you can correct me if I'm not using the right verbiage here, but it wasn't going to be offered and then they offered it, correct?
Yes, they're piloting it out. They were building it new for the connection with our student information system. So we weren't allowed to be part of the pilot, and we pushed a bit to ensure that we could get this thing called Passback, which you'll explain.
Yes. So thank you, thank you, thank you. All of us were just honestly so grateful for that. So what happens is all of those grades that were in Canvas, and I was very, I made sure I told my students and I told my parents, like, my grades are in Canvas. And then to move them all to MyStar one by one was going to be extremely difficult to do. So grade pass back happened, yay. And we were able to then just sync our grades. So what it is all of my grades in Canvas. I just have to sync them all. I have to just click on all of them, or there's different ways to go about it. But the important thing is that all of my grades that are in Canvas, which are constantly being updated, right? Because sometimes I'll get on my phone or in the morning and I'll grade papers, late at night, grade papers. And so they're always immediate in Canvas, but they don't go to MyStar until we got this beautiful thing called Grade Passback. And now they are all synced. All I have to do is sync them over. I take all of my Canvas grades and they go magically into MyStar. So it was honestly very, very appreciated. And those of us that started in Canvas with our grade book, and some didn't, some staff didn't, but I was one of the ones who did, we were very, very grateful. So good. It's a beautiful thing. And now we have them in both places. And so it's very, it's easier for students and I think more for parents. I think the students were fine seeing them in Canvas. Yeah. I think it's more for the parents that they can see them in both places.
Right.
Did I miss anything, Margaret? Is that right? Good.
Perfect.
So happy, honestly.
Good. Well, thank you for that response. It's nice to hear that that things are working out at times as well, and as many challenges as we've had, like you began to experience. And that's, to me, that's the big thing about as I listen to hear stories about implementing the LMS, or in my experience, any reform that a district takes on. When we have staff folk, people that are always focused on the problem solving and moving things forward and making this commitment, that's what makes our classrooms great and our schools great and our district great is your persistence and willingness to stay with things and solve the problems and be able to seek out ways for us to move forward. And really, we can't do that from central office. We can't do that from the building principal position. It actually takes teachers to get in and help figure this out, because you're operationalizing all this. And so again, we want to thank both of you and the rest of the staff for taking that challenge on. I mean, that's the professionalism that comes in with all this, and not just the technical knowledge. So we do appreciate the work that you've been doing to help figure these things out and move us forward. Everything from the big blue button to the gradebook passback. So one last question for the group today, Margaret. With the rollout of the gradebook passback, so we know what it means from Pat's perspective on this, certainly. But what does it mean? What will it mean for our parents and our students?
Well, one of the things we talked about earlier is, figuring out that teacher role in Canvas, the student and the parent. And there's areas that we've excelled at supporting, and some areas that took us longer to figure out because we had to learn so much. And so that student and parent connection about where to see grades started to pop up, because we had talked to staff about, MyStar is your grade, and we kind of assumed everyone would stay in MyStar. And then some people started using Gradebook Passback. And so parents were like, well, this teacher, I see the grades in MyStar. This teacher, I see the grade in Canvas, or I see some grades in MyStar, some grades in Canvas. So it got confusing. I think teachers did a good job talking with students, but then parents don't always know, is my student telling me the right thing? Is there really these grades in Canvas versus MyStar? So what's going to happen is, here as we approach the end of the quarter, every teacher will make sure in MyStar they've kind of put their total points that might have been formative or summative that they had in Canvas that weren't yet in MyStar, and kind of put those so that MyStar has a nice kind of base grading point to start. And then teachers that are using Canvas for the grading will continue to do what they're doing with assignments and grading in Canvas, and then they'll sync things periodically to MyStar so that the two stay in sync with each other. So staff members that want to use the gradebook, the assignments, can still ensure things are in MyStar while also having all the benefits of Canvas. If there are teachers that haven't pushed out and worked in the gradebook in Canvas, that's okay. They can continue to enter as they normally will with MyStar. But MyStar is kind of our official record book. That's what will go to report cards and to transcripts. So we're using Canvas as a vehicle because it really helps with the whole process. So as we start, I think we're setting the date of October 30th, if I recall. That's when the passback goes out to all staff. And so right now we had a pilot group. It's actually already available to all staff, but we wanted to make sure we had a pilot group to work out all the kinks so we could make sure we ready our teachers. So there'll be some professional development for teachers on November 3rd on our PD day, and we'll be able to, staff who wants to use it can use it and hopefully be as excited as Pat.
Yeah. I was going to say, I do feel like I have to put a little asterisk in there, if I may. So for me, because I started in Canvas and I had my Canvas set up exactly like MyStar, it was seamless for me. I don't want other staff to be assuming it's going to be seamless for them.
Yes.
It might not be, so that's why there's the pilot group. But
Yep.
Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yep.
Might
Yes.
not, yeah.
Yes, because there's going to be some learning curves depending on where people are going into this pass back. And so, but that's why we want to make sure we train the LMS building leads ahead of time. We have our pilot group kind of trained ahead of time so that we have more support in the district. Because honestly, we didn't think we'd start this yet. And we're moving it up because staff felt like it was a real necessity. And for parents, we needed to make sure parents really understood where things were. So.
Yeah, I mean, I have to tell you, I've been out of the classroom so long, even the phones since I've evolved out of the classroom. So here Pat mentioned that she's grading papers from her phone and providing feedback to students from her phone. I mean, it's a whole new world.
Yes.
So again, some radical changes for you guys with this tool or the product that we brought in. And again, I one of the things you mentioned, Peggy, that kind of near and dear to my heart was that, you mentioned it gives us an opportunity to experiment. And, as you take a look at it from the administrative perspective, giving teachers the opportunity to experiment, be more innovative, and take those risks or have permission to take risks that as educators, we've always been a little reluctant because, you guys always want to do it exactly right. You don't give us much room to say, hey, you have permission to only do it half right now, or we're going to give you time to learn and grow. You guys always have to have that detailed plan, and you want it to be spot on. So for you to mention the fact that you feel like you actually have time to experiment, you have time to take some risk, and you have time to grow and try out some new tools. I mean, that's music to my ears. So thank you for saying that and pointing that out, and I appreciate you having that perspective yourself. So I have no more questions for the group. I'd have to give you all an A today, of course, from my end. In your responses. You won't receive that through the LMS, though. I'll just send it to you. But again, thank you for all the work that you've been doing. And I'll give this group one last opportunity to add anything as we close out. If you have any last comments or anything you'd like to say.
I'd just like to say that my students have been really great at, they've been very flexible. And I appreciate how flexible they've been, and they've been honest with their feedback. And I've kind of told them, this may be awesome, or this may be a flaming bag of doo-doo. So I need you to tell me and be honest with me. So that I said that before our first test. I said that before. I go, we're going to try something new. I've never done it again, but I need you to be honest and please don't ever do that again, or I loved it. Please continue to do that. So our kids they've been very flexible, and I've been constantly asking them for feedback. And I've even had some stay after class and have said, Mr. Jarian, remember how you asked me, what's working and what you really would have, is there anything that you think that teachers need to know from our perspective? So I had a young lady stay after. She happens to be one of my officers in National Honor Society, but she stayed after class and she had a whole list. I would really appreciate if teachers would do this. And then if they did this, this would be better for everybody. And so the kids are, I found myself being even extra flexible, but the kids too, they've really done a good job, and I'm really proud of them.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, well, again, I would like to thank everybody for their time today, and looking forward to hearing more great stories in the future. And enjoy the rest of your day. And I would like to thank for those who listened in today. Thank you for your time, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks with another Friday Spotlight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.